Today we're going to take you through some of the up-and-coming and in some cases least known non-recessives in ball pythons. That means that these would be dominants and incomplete dominants. Starting off at number 13 would be the Trojan. A lot of people do know what Trojan is, but there's probably a fair portion of you that don't. It's got an okay amount of availability and it's actually fairly cheap, unlike many of the other things we're going to be talking about here. It's a very good enhancer gene. Now, a lot of times when you look at enhancement type genes, unless you're talking about desert ghosts, you're going to be looking at an animal that by itself might not look too spectacular. It just kind of looks like a normal with very subtle differences. Trojan, on the other hand, I think looks spectacular just by itself. Without trying to diss on the gene, but it's almost like a diet desert ghost. If you don't want to work the desert ghost line and you would rather it be in a incomplete dominant, you can work something like Trojan, and Trojan gives you these nice clean colors and brightens the animal up. A great example of this would be right here with this Enchi Super Trojan. So this is two copies of the Trojan gene showing that it is an incomplete dominant, and typically just a normal Enchi clown, especially one with some age to it like this one, it really glows. I have an Enchi pastel clown, and I can tell you right now that they are beautiful in their own right, but they do kind of rust out, whereas the Trojan, even one copy of it, will keep that at bay pretty much for life. You can't go wrong with Trojan. I say that it's a lightning enhancing type gene, but it can even be used in dark combos as well to stave off an overpowering of that. There's a lot of contrast that you need when working these genes, especially in the dark gene side. You really need to keep it from overpowering the animal completely, and things like this help out. Here's just one copy of the Trojan. You can still see this nice creamy color. It really does have that reminiscent feel of Desert Ghost to it. Quite often when we do our auction videos that we release on every Friday, I see Trojan up there for criminally low prices. This is a gene that is not worked as well as it should, and even though it is our first one on the list, it could be one that you add into your collection to really make you stand apart and set you up for success for a relatively cheap gene to get into. The regular Trojans just by themselves you can get for roughly about 150 bucks for a male, about 350-ish for a female. I see them on the auction site at least every other week. They go for a criminally low amount. So take advantage of the deals and add something that's going to set you apart in your collection. At number 12 would be the Het Daddy or the Weirdo gene. They're often thought to be the same. I don't think anybody's actually proven that yet, but the Het Daddy is one that we have here. This is actually in the blue-eyed leucistic complex. However, there's some mixed thoughts on how that would work when pairing it with other blue-eyed leucistics, that it might not create an all-white snake. And if that sounds crazy to you, it shouldn't. Something like the Mystic Potion, which when these genes are combined with other genes in the blue-eyed leucistic, they create an all-white snake, but when they combine together, they don't. They create almost like a purplish animal. But there's a lot of mixed thought out there, something I can't conclusively say one way or the other. Morph Market even has it listed as a dominant gene. Again, it's difficult to say. With that said, if you're looking into the other name that it's called, the Weirdo, you get a lot of this with the puzzle. It seems to work very well with that, and it accentuates the sides and brings up this peachy color in mine, at least. Kind of localizes all the pattern to the back of the snake, which I really like. It's a very beautiful animal. They're different as adults from when they're babies, but they look really good as both. But by itself, it's another very unassuming type of gene. It's not something that's going to blow you away, and it's not something that's incredibly expensive, quite frankly. It's just what it can do in combinations, and often with the popularity of puzzle and how much it's growing, you see the Weirdo and the Het Daddy paired with this. Quite often they are just part of the deal, almost like how Blade Clown was for such a long time. Just kind of an unusual gene that seems to have attached itself to the puzzle gene, because it is very cool in its interaction with that. At number 11 would be the Orbit. It has a bit of a pixelation. It seems to almost flirt with both light and dark. The animal has those dark hues, almost gives off some vibes of a GHI with its pixelation that it brings in there, but it's not just solely dark. It doesn't bring in the shadowing that GHI does, but it does add a little bit of granulation to the animal's pattern. But what I really like about it is some of the combos that you can create. Mostly this Mojave Orbit that I see here. Just two genes right here, and this is really, really cool. Not at all like a GHI GHI Mojave, really. It doesn't darken up as much, and the pattern has been reduced and shrunk just to really the top of the animal, leaving the sides kind of barren with this cool shading. So just adding leopard to this, you almost get striping. It's weird because leopard's supposed to have spots, right? Sure, it's got some spots, but it's almost like a tri-stripe. Very cool, very unique. And we'll look at our last one here. I struggle to even describe what I see before me. It almost looks like an actual zebra. This is a lesser GHI leopard orbit. The GHI and the orbit work so well together. This has a very cookies and cream look feel to it to me. Just an absolutely incredible example of what you could possibly do with this gene. And remember, this has no recessives in it, what you're looking at right here. If you were to work something into this, I don't even know. There's so many different ideas. I mean, clown, obviously. Xanthic would look probably amazing on this one. Just a really cool gene that you just don't really hear about a lot. There isn't very many of them for sale. Literally almost every single one of them I just showed you. Looks like somebody has at one point at least sold one for somewhere in the 300s, 200s. Definitely a gene that could really set you apart if you were able to snag one. For now, the cheapest that you can get is about 800 bucks off Morph Market anyway. Finally down to a number that I can put up on my fingers, and that would be Furrow coming in at number 10. The Furrow also kind of has this granulated type look to it, similar to the other one. It definitely brings in these speckles in the alien heads. It definitely gives off the GHI type vibes, just again without the shadowing, but this one seems a little bit more dirty than Orbit from last time. A little bit more dark too. And again, looking at the super form first here, this would be a Super Furrow Butter. It really just explodes the pattern, and here it almost looks like it does have a lot of that GHI influence when it's in super. It really does bring in this kind of shadowy type look to it, but it doesn't take it over the top in terms of its color. It's shadowed, but it definitely still gives off this bright type vibe, which doesn't happen quite a bit. Only these types of pixelating genes similar to this, like GHI, can really achieve something like this. But Furrow seems to do a little bit different with the pattern too, in that it kind of shrinks alien heads into this almost like a hieroglyphic type look, I guess. Here's another good Super Furrow just by itself. You can really see what it's doing to this pattern. Still very distinct from GHI. It looks very freckled, just looking at the animal as a whole. Definitely dark, but not shadowed here. You can kind of see some of the combos created down here. Again, this is just on the traits page. You can just click on the little circular symbol next to the name, and it'll take you to this page, tells you a little bit about a history of it. But looking at some of the Super Furrows here, especially this one right here, this Butter Super Furrow, which is similar to the other one, this is just exploding with color. It does have a lot of this shading on there, but it brings in a lot of cool shaded browns. The whites just creeping in from the bottom give it a ton of awesome contrast, and the really cool wavy electric line going down its back like a bit of electric razor wire. Definitely a gene where it hasn't come anywhere near its potential. A lot of work that can be done with this for people who love this pixelated type look. At number 9 would be the Nyla gene. Nyla definitely brightens up the snake, but the alien heads are more of like these keyholes or just circular holes. Almost how Mojave does it, just a little bit different. But what I really fall in love with this animal is with its combos. You can kind of see the banana, Nyla, yellow belly clown here. This is just bursting with lavenders, yellows, and oranges everywhere. Like confetti. It's super, super cool, but this just regular Nyla clown, where do I even start? It's like flirting with both light and dark. I really love this frosted look that it has to it, and the head, it's a caramel colored, just so awesome. Looking through kind of a snapshot of a lot of these animals that have been made and worked in the Nyla. I mean, look at this one, the Nyla Spot-Nose Sugar Clown. Why does it seem that all of these have a frosted kind of look to them? That's really cool and unique to me. One other thing that I found very interesting is the pictures of the Super Nyla, which is a practically black snake. For something that brings in so much frost to it, you wouldn't think that you're gonna get something quite like this. Very dark, almost like reddish type hues to it, giving off a rusty type undertone. This vanilla Nyla Pied kind of gives me the vibes of a Sumapide. And if you look at this Super Nyla Clown, I believe this is the world's first Super Nyla Clown. And this brings in a lot of granulation to it. Look at this back to it, just very faded out. The head just kind of almost freckled, like some sort of like cinnamon pudding. I really like this one. A lot of granulation on the sides as well. It's a very, very versatile gene. I I can't find anything with the single gene, but when I looked earlier just for ones that have sold, they're around the $150 to $200 mark. A lot of them have possible hets or hets to them or the other genes, and honestly, why not just after seeing how awesome that clown was, get one with clown in it. Save yourself a lot of unnecessary steps of breeding them yourself and just go for these awesome combos. It is a really underrated gene, and it's not that crazy hard to get into, honestly. A lot of local shows, smaller shows, if that's the kind of shows that you are working, they aren't going to have this. So if you are looking for something to set yourself up to be unique and cool while not just being trendy, this speaks for itself. Take a look at the Nyla gene, because there's a lot to offer and a lot more things that can be worked with it. At number 8 would be the Twister gene, and this one is incredibly rare. I don't see it out there all that much. Not to be confused with the Tornado, by the way, which is a recessive morph and is really cool in its own right. The Twister has a lot of uniqueness to itself. Now, there is one Twister for sale on Morph Market right now, and quite frankly, I think the Pastel Inchy Yellow Belly conquers quite a bit of it. So let's look at some of the ones that have sold, and they have commanded a fair price. This Twister Mojave with a het pied is incredible. You have the shading coming in. It almost looks like some sort of 8-bit video game from bygone eras of Nintendo. It's incredible. While it is kind of shaded out, it's not dark like what GHI would do. It's almost like a light shadowing. You can see a lot of different ones here, some with Nyla in them. Here's a Nyla Twister, just kind of granulates the side of it as well. There's a lot of potential there considering what we just showed. And another Twister Mojave het pied. Just a really cool gene that, again, a lot of people don't pay much attention to. Now, I don't believe that this one is the absolute cheapest. However, there are some ones on auctions. They don't tell you what they went for, but I'm pretty sure I've seen them going for some pretty good deals. This one could be a little more difficult to get into. Like I said, there's only one available right now, but definitely a really cool animal that when you can get a look like this with 2 genes, you have a wonderful building block. Definitely something to be considered if this sort of look, if this granulation type look is up your alley. At number 7 would be the Mandarin gene, also known as the NR Mandarin. And you can kind of see a lot of what it does here. It's very tangerine type orange. Orange is definitely represented in ball pythons, but this type of tannish tangerine is not. You don't see it quite as much, so it's cool, it's unique. But not all Mandarins seem to be the same. You can see this one looks incredible, right? But this one here just kind of looks like a normal, right? So here is a Mandarin het hypo, and you're gonna notice that hypos seem to follow this gene around a lot. The long and short of it is everyone for a while thought that maybe this was just the Super Mandarin right here. But it was discovered that it actually had the hypo gene as well. So it wasn't just Super Mandarin, it's Super Mandarin hypo. And that's okay because it still looks cool as heck. Even with just one copy of the Mandarin, this Mandarin Yellow Belly hypo, I'm sure the Yellow Belly helps here quite a bit. You can kind of see where people absolutely fell in love with this. The oranges are so intense yet faded and ghostly at the same time. It just seems to be like a ray of sunshine to me. Almost photoshopped or a watercoloring type painting. Certainly a very cool gene that still has a lot that can be done with it, because a lot of what has been done with it is just with hypo. You created that and it was very cool. Well, where do we go from there? I'd like to see the Super Mandarin hypo clown, and it looks like a lot of other people would like to see that too, considering the hets that I'm seeing this with. So that is probably the next crazy step, outside of maybe also pairing this with Desert Ghost, which again looks like somebody has already done here. This, however, is not a gene you're going to get into likely for very cheap. It will certainly gather some attention, but it's a difficult one, I think, to work because by itself it's a little unassuming. It's just when you start to layer it upon itself and get these recessives that work with it so well into the mix that you're really cooking with fire. At number 6 would be the Voodoo, appropriately named because it was founded and produced by Bob Vu. This one, again, seems to have a lot of granulation type look to it. There's a lot of granulation animals coming out because it's really been discovered that you can do a lot with these animals. It's not just dirtiness, it's a controlled kind of chaos, and you can really rein it in. The snake by itself obviously has a lot of this granulation to it, but they all seem to do something just a bit different. The Super Voodoo here is definitely different than what you'd see in, say, a Super GHI. Really dark undertones with a brightening towards the bottom, and it just blows it up in a way where it's just like speckled. It's almost like it becomes like a dark monsoon just along some strip of the side of it. You can get into the voodoos for not an insane amount. You can also start working a lot of this into your collection, just like with this lesser voodoo, just 500 bucks. I'm really loving this chocolate fire voodoo. I'd honestly look to see it without the fire in a way too. It's just going to be a lot darker, but I still feel like that contrast is going to be fine there because this is pretty bright. Again, another pixelating type gene that seems to be able to capture the shadowing type features that like what GHI seems to get. Obviously a lot of work and things that can be done with this animal. So like this one right here, the Mojave, just seems to work with all these pixelating genes so incredibly well. And this is no exception here, how it just shrinks the alien heads into these little circles that have been just decimated, just so eerie in a way. Very cool in how much pixelation it does. And the shadowing, everybody looks at the pattern, but you're not looking back here in how it has almost like an eraser on something where you never truly are able to get all of the pencil mark up. It kind of creates that, but in a very controlled, consistent manner. You'd think it's dirty, but it's not. It is a consistent animal all the way down, just very exotic looking. And when you're saying that sort of stuff about an exotic animal, well, it means it's really standing out. As I have gone through this list, one thing that became very apparent is that there's a good amount of granulation type genes, and a lot of them interact very different from each other. There are some that are somewhat similar, but each one has their own little bit of flavor. And there's going to be two more coming up here that are granulation type genes, and they're often compared to one another, quite frankly. First up, coming in at number 5, would be the pixel. We talked about the pixel last time we did this, and it was also on that list in the top genes. And since then, when I said that I'd like to get into that type of gene because I love these types of genes, I also said that I don't think I'd be able to because the prices were quite high. Well, I ended up getting into this gene, and I can't wait to start working it. It is very much a granulation type gene, and it's very much in its infancy. Again, looking at this animal, you can see another level of pixelation to the pattern, but yet it leaves the body of the animal alone. A lot of the benchmark when it comes to granulation genes are compared, I feel, to GHI, and this one's unique to that in that it stands out, but it does it in a way that is darker overall than your normal type, I feel, but it's still much brighter than a lot of the other granulation genes. A lot of granulation genes are dark, and while that is no difference here, there is a much more clear picture when it comes to what isn't affected by the granulation. But as with other ones, once you start getting these into these combos here, you can see where the shadowing stays, but it doesn't bring in dark shadowing. It does it in a way that minimizes the intensity of the coloring, but with a way that's orange on this yellow belly red stripe pixel. Looking at one of the coolest intense examples of a pixel, I honestly thought it was a clown when I first saw the pattern. It's actually just a het clown, but that pattern on the side is so deceiving. This is a leopard fire red stripe pixel het clown, and these work very well together. Red stripe really starts to shine when you can break the pattern up because it starts to sneak in during the pattern breaks, and leopard does that, pixel does that. Obviously they work incredibly well together to create this amazing animal. And again, if I covered its head up basically and showed you just the body, you might think this was a clown. Just look at what it does to the sides of this red stripe pixel. That's just 2 genes right there. Yes, it has the het piebald, but that's not going to affect what you see here. Like I said, when you have the ability to create something this unique with just 2 genes, you're on to something, regardless of whether it works with other things or not. And this certainly has lots of other applications. What I see here over a lot of the other granite type genes that we've talked about today, which there's been a good amount, is that this one is actually keeping a lot of these little pixels, like one scale here and there, and a more crazy representation of it. It really looks like pixel art to me. A very untapped gene as of right now. And there's not been a lot of work with this. Not a cheap gene to get into, but if it works out for you and if prices do come down into your range, I do recommend working this gene. It is going to do some very cool things. At number 4, and what I promised to be the last granite type gene, would be the Cosmos. Now, this one, I believe, is mostly just worked, I think, in South Africa. Maybe it's in Europe. Only a very small select few breeders are working them in the US. This one here seems to have that crazy pixelation to it, but also keeping it a dark gene. I feel like of all of the granite ones we've talked about, this is probably one of the most extreme ones. Canova, within the last month or two, released this video video, kind of showing a lot of these animals off, and you can see right here just the absolute crazy intensity that you're getting with this. I mean, just look at this one with the orange on the top of it. Words fail me right now, and I'm usually over descripted. It looks like the Halloween donuts with the orange sprinkles on it. And they actually ended up also creating this chocolate cosmos desert ghost clown. You can see the variety of different colors here, where this is just super creamy, but it's a perfect blending of white to yellow to orange on the back, very neon, but yet the faded black. In a way, it almost just completely controls the pixelation from this. It uses that beautiful coloring that it brings in as well. I would love to get on this gene. It's something to keep your eye on, because right now it has a definite case for being the king of all the granite type genes. At number 3 would be the Striker, and this is an incredibly awesome gene. What it does is it disrupts the pattern and brings a lot of it just stretching over the top of the snake. Looks very much like the zebra morph does for recessives, and there's no definite proof right now that it isn't it. Now, would that make it a recessive, or would that make zebra an incomplete dominant? It's tough to say, but this has a single gene appearance. Looking at this Striker pastel here, you can see this is not just a normal pastel. The pattern stretches over the top of it, and it's just very wacky in terms of what it's doing to it. It kind of creates almost like a ring around the animal. The only place that it breaks is, well, at the stomach level, but you're definitely getting this cool stripe type look to it all the way down. Something you don't really see all that much. Enchi is the closest thing, and it doesn't even come close to what you're seeing here. And this is just the normal form. Again, look at the pattern on this orange dream yellow belly striker. Definitely unique. It really just waves it all around the animal. There's no alien heads anymore, but yet it's not blowing up. It's just incredibly different. And once you see the super striker here, you can 100% see why people compare this to the zebra morph. This does the same things, and it just seems so electric, almost like it has hypo in there. Here's a super striker yellow belly right here. So you can see that one we looked at earlier might have been the hypo, but it really just wraps the pattern over the top of the animal. And just like when I was talking about the zebra morph, they make incredible display animals too, because when they're in display cases, you are naturally looking down on them. So to have an animal with the pattern on its back is just super awesome in terms of just the looks. And if you are trying to sell an animal, it displays incredibly well. I am very excited for the future of Striker, as you'll find out next week. Coming in at number 2 would be the Bang gene. This one is one of the most tangerine type animals I've ever seen. It is incredibly rare, so if you haven't heard of it, I wouldn't be surprised. I have seen one in person. It was at a Tinley show, and I haven't seen it since. This is very much more popular in Europe. Similar to the Mandarin, but I think more intense, quite frankly. It really brings in these awesome, beautiful, crisp, clean oranges, and really earns its name. Its little nickname, I guess, is the Tangerine Nightmare. Sounds like a wrestler. Seeing it here at this super bang, so it is a incomplete dominant, and when I was looking at this, I thought that it was like a super enchi clown or something along those lines. Again, then I see the head and I'm like, oh no, it's not. This is where it really gets a awesome coloring to it. What we're looking at here is the super bang clown, and you really get these almost desert ghostish type vibes, but with the crisp clean orange. Almost looks like it's a Batman in a way. It really affects that pattern and brings in some of the brightest oranges that you're gonna find on an animal, almost like the sun. It is incredibly clean on top of all of that. Like I said, it almost looks like it's a Batman Orange Dream desert ghost clown, to me anyways. A lot of power packed in this gene, which can be a little more, again, unassuming by itself, but you see the potential of it. Not a cheap gene, but one that is very, very rare and has an infinite amount of possibilities for its future. And at number 1 for up-and-coming genes, at least in my opinion, is the gorilla morph. I have seen this one in person a few times, and I have absolutely fallen in love with this gene and what it can do. By itself, you can see that it's definitely a very dark morph. Kind of almost lightens up the head in a way though too, and creates this frosty type look. But along the back dorsal, it's very, very dark. But when you get this into other combos, it absolutely blows you away. Here is a GHI gorilla versus a GHI. The dark patterns that you're getting here are unmatched. It looks like an eclipse. I absolutely can't even describe anything that looks quite like this. There's a lot of cool darkening genes out there. Strangers, Black Pastel, GHI, but this looks like the snake is in outer space. Again, this is just something so incredibly unique. It gets these neon type yellows coming through, but look at the shadowy pattern on this. I've never seen anything be as dark as this and then have a perfect white glowy outline and then back to the darkness. It's like a black hole. It layers so good with other dark jeans because it keeps it at bay, but like right to the line of being over the top and just washing out to be a all black snake. Not that there's anything wrong with that. An all black snake is awesome, but at some point the all black snake will become just as unworkable as the all white snake. They're cool, but where do you go from there? Well, there's a lot you can go from here because this does not completely black out. This right here, what we're looking at, is a blackhead gorilla. Again, just works so good with it. It's dark, but yet comes in this almost like frosty type awesome contrast. And just again, look at these sides. This level of black with this contrast at the same time can be very difficult to get. I've just not seen something bring in this level of darkness, but yet preserve the golden colors of the ball python. Usually this is like a brownish along the back. It's not this dark. It's just so incredibly beautiful and intense that I think it's actually one of the most unique jeans that I've ever seen. I would very much like to get into this someday. I don't know how I can make that a possibility just yet, but if the founder at NBK Reptiles is watching this, reach out and let me know, please, because I'd be very interested. I don't know anything about the cost or anything like that, so I don't know if I can make that a possibility, but I would very much like to at least start to plan for it because it is super incredible. And I have a lot of ideas that I won't say right now that I'd like to work this into. This jean has my tastes written all over it. Let us know what you thought. Sign them off in the comments, some stuff that you like. If you like this video, you can actually check out our video that we recently did on the top up and coming recessive jeans right here.